What is going on, everybody? I am back today to talk about a movie that was just released on VOD that, to be completely honest, I didn't know anything about it other than it stars Matt Smith and Morfydd Clark. And I'm a big fan of Matt Smith from Doctor Who. I've been a huge Doctor Who fan for a while now, and I've always really enjoyed him in other projects that he's shown up in. And Morfydd Clark was in Rose Glass's film Saint Maud. I thought she delivered an excellent performance in that movie. So I've been really excited to watch another film with her in a leading role. And so the two of them being in this movie and knowing it was a horror film was enough for me to jump on board and check it out. And the film I'm going to be discussing with you today is Starve Acre. Starve Acre is directed by Daniel Kokotajlo. When their son starts acting strangely, a couple unwittingly allow dark and sinister forces into their home, awakening a long dormant ancient evil rooted deep in the countryside. So I was really excited to watch this movie because of the two actors involved, and I'm always looking forward to watching a new horror movie. And this movie was fine. It's kind of mediocre. I really loved the performances in this movie. I thought they were exceptional. The movie is beautifully shot, but I feel like when it comes to what the film is trying to convey and the dread and the sorrow and the horror that the film wants you to feel, I feel like it falls short, and I don't feel like it does the best job at conveying those emotions. And I'll talk about that more when I break the film down. So at the beginning of the film, we're introduced to Richard and Juliet, played by Matt Smith and Morfydd Clark. They live on the countryside with their young son, and Richard is an archaeology professor, I believe, at a college, and they're trying to build this life together. And at the beginning of the movie, we see their son get involved in this accident where he harms an animal, and they take him to this doctor, and he's going through all of these psychiatric evaluations, and they just want to have a normal life together. And something horrible happens to the family. And after this horrible thing happens, Matt Smith's character is digging outside of their home because he's an archaeologist. He finds this bunny rabbit carcass, and slowly but surely, the bunny rabbit carcass starts to come to life. And the entirety of the film, as the plot description states, is Matt Smith's character uncovers this ancient evil, and when he uncovers it, how it impacts his entire family. So as I said, I felt like this movie was okay. It was relatively mediocre because I feel like it was so much of what I've already seen in these types of films before. I will start off with the positives. I really thought Matt Smith and Morfydd Clark both did a phenomenal job in their roles. They're playing this family that is overcoming this horrific situation, and I feel like the grief and the sorrow that they're showcasing as actors, you can tell that they're really doing their best to live and breathe these roles, and I really appreciated that. They have a lot of sequences where they get into arguments, and because of the grief that they're experiencing, you can kind of understand both sides of the coin and why they're feeling the way that they're feeling and how they're processing their grief and their emotions. And because they're two really talented actors, it was very easy to invest yourself in their performances. This movie's also really beautifully shot because they live out on the countryside. There's a lot of really beautiful wide shots of the house that they live in. I feel like it does a really nice job capturing empty space and letting your mind wander as to things that are going to happen, or like what horrific imagery you're going to see next, because the movie does provide some horrific imagery. I really like some of the practical effects in the movie. I think it's probably a mixture of practical and a little bit of CGI, especially when it comes to the bunny rabbit that shows up in the first 30 minutes of the movie, but it looks really solid. I feel like the director did a nice job paying attention to detail and creating a world that is easy for the audience to immerse themselves into. But past that, that's where my problems come into play. This is trying to be a folk horror film that ties into familial trauma and grief, which is we've seen over and over and over again in horror recently, which I'm not one of those people who is like, oh, movies about familial trauma, we can't make them anymore, because I think they're very important. I think what's so great about horror is real life is hard. Familial trauma is a very real thing. I'm someone who's experienced a lot of familial trauma in my life. And so because of that, watching horror films where people are pulling from real life experience, or even if it's just a made up story, and doing it in a very fantastical way to make those emotions come across in a very real, raw, and authentic form, I'm always going to be willing to appreciate and watch that type of media. But I feel like this movie doesn't do the greatest job at getting those really heavy emotions across. I didn't really feel any dread in this film, or any sense of just eerie ominousness that the director was clearly trying to go for. There's a couple of like cheap jump scare moments in the movie, which is really weird because for the most part it feels like it's trying to be very refined and quiet and slow paced, which I would appreciate considering the third act goes in a very twisted and sick direction. But instead of having the patience to get there and let it all kind of fall apart, I feel like the director was worried the audience would get a little bored with how dry the movie can be in points, and so they just incorporate little moments like that. And I feel like the incorporation of the folklore is like so minimal that you're piecing so much together in your head about how it all operates that I didn't find it all that interesting, like the whole entity and what this is that's working around the house causing these horrific things to happen. I feel like if you spent more time diving into it that it would have been more fascinating. But there's so many moments of just the husband and wife kind of getting into altercations, and when the wife's sister comes into play, and the family drama works in moments, but some of it starts to feel repetitive as the film moves along. And this is about an hour and 40 minutes long, so it's not like a super lengthy runtime, but I feel like there are moments that are just a little too padded for their own good. And I found myself really enjoying specific moments, but overall, when the ending happened, I just didn't feel like it was all that satisfying, despite how weird and uncomfortable it was. It just felt like it was, we got to get something out of the audience because the remainder of the movie has been so dry and kind of bland. And that's unfortunate because I feel like the two leads really give it their all in this movie, and I was so impressed with them in multiple moments of the film. And I'm not saying this is like a bad movie by any means. I just don't think it's really anything all that special. So have you seen Starve Acre? Did you love it? Did you hate it? Leave me a comment down below and let me know what you thought. I thought this movie had a lot of potential, but mostly it let me down in the end. As always, if you can like the video and subscribe to the channel, helps me out a lot and lets me know the type of content you're looking for. I'm always putting out new material and look forward to getting more out for you in the near future. And as always, everyone, thank you so much for watching and have a great rest of your day.